They call me Squirrel.
Squirrel Squad, it is your boy, the Squirrel. I'm back. This is part 2 of a video I did a couple weeks ago. I quite enjoyed the video. I just had to cut out all the driving, but the channel is about driving, I guess. It's called, the channel's called, Auto Shenanigans. So, you know, there's going to be some driving. I just figured I'd cut those pieces out, made it a little bit shorter than it was. Thoroughly enjoyed it, though. It's pretty neat. So, this is a grand tour of offensive places in England. Part 2. Let's get into it. Once number 1 was over, about 20 people sent me over and they, part 2's out. So that's great. So I'm excited. I've been having this sit here. I was actually planning on, I was going to do this one for next week, but I figured I'd record 2 things for Friday this week since my Wednesday release got blocked. Thanks, YouTube, and thanks, SMG. You guys are amazing. So I'll try to still get out 3 videos this week, so I'm going to do 2. And if one of these gets blocked, at least we're going to get something on a Friday. This one won't get blocked, but the other one might. We'll see. But probably not. It's Tim Vine. Probably not. Tim's pretty cool. Here we go. Let's get into this. I want to do this, a grand tour of offensive places in England. I just want to dig into being offended. Nothing offends me. But I want to hear about offensive places. Here we go.
Bell End, Minge Lane, 69, Willie. Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Welcome to part 2 of our grand tour or road trip where we're visiting several places across the country that have some rather offensive or silly place names. In the last video we ended in Willie, which is found to the north of Rugby in Warwickshire. Our tour today takes us into Leicestershire and 55 miles from Willie to our next destination. However, where I am now isn't the location that we're looking for. I've made a little bit of a stop to look at something that I thought was quite interesting. Although it's fair to say I might regret making this little stop and detour. We should have just cracked on, really, because look at the state of this. Yeah. In part 1, we ended with some
The disgusting grey water.
railway content, so I thought for part 2 we could start with some railway content. I'll keep it brief and try not to bore you too much. On the way to our next destination, we passed Old Dalby, where we find the Old Dalby test track. In 1984, the track was used to test the integrity of flasks that were used to transport nuclear fuel elements, creating possibly some of the most famous railway footage ever. In simple terms, they crashed a train into one of these flasks just to see what would happen.
That's pretty interesting, huh? See if they can stop. Wow.
Leaving Leicestershire behind, we head into Lincolnshire where we find our next stop. Welcome to Bitchfield. Bitchfield village is sort of made up of 2 halves. You've got the main Bitchfield and then lower Bitchfield, which is accessed via Dark Lane, like a couple of bitches. Bitchfield can trace its roots as far back.
I mean, where the hell's there's this Bitchfield and lower? There's no upper Bitchfield? I feel like there really should be, or like I don't know, like maybe build a city near Bitchfield and you can call it like Mega Bitchfield. You could just call it Karen Town. One of the 2.
Back as the medieval times, and to the south of Bitchfield is what's known as the Campfield Earthworks. At first glance, it's just a patch of land, but this land is not naturally formed, which suggests
That's a cool split tree. It looks like it's struck by lightning. You see that sucker?
a settlement here, most likely dating back to the medieval era. If that's the case, and it seems very likely that it is, Bitchfield would have once been a much larger village that over the years has reduced in size.
Yeah, it's been around since the medieval era. I want to go metal detecting there. Damn.
Apparently there's a storm coming today. 45-mile-an-hour gusts. Before we head off to our next destination, I wanted to make a quick detour because a few miles to the east of Bitchfield is the former RAF Wokingham. During World War II, Lincolnshire was littered with airfields totalling around 50 across the county, but I think the history of RAF Wokingham is a little bit more interesting post-war. During the late 40s, early 50s, a company called British Racing Motors, or BRM, would use the runway for vehicle and engine testing. Their first engine was to be used in F1, and it was a 1.5-litre supercharged V16 engine capable of producing 600 horsepower at 12,000 RPM. And whilst that sounds absolutely insane, and it is, it proved to be somewhat unreliable and was withdrawn in 1952. BRM would be kicked out of Wokingham in the late 1950s by the RAF and the United States Air Force, who wanted to use the sites for their Thor missile systems. These were rather large missiles that were mostly targeted on Russia during the Cold War era, and across the country you'd have found around 60 of these missile sites ready to go at short notice. And indeed, during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, nearly every single Thor missile was placed on a 15-minute readiness schedule should they be required. Fortunately, they weren't required, and a few years later, the Thor missile systems were all withdrawn. Today, the launch sites remain in situ because it's not economically viable to demolish and remove what's left of them. Right, I'm back in the car for the final leg of the tour. The A15 eventually reaches the M180 motorway, at which point we need to take a right turn to continue our journey. However, before we do that, we're going to head left, which will take us into Scunthorpe, the only town with in the name. It's famous for its steelworks and industrial areas, and it's also home of the A1077M, a stupid waste of a motorway. To cross into Yorkshire, we need to use the Humber Bridge, a bridge that goes over the Humber. It opened in 1981, and at the time it was the longest bridge of its type at 1.38 miles, a record that it held until 1998. To construct it, the road decks were brought in on barges and then hoisted into position via cables. Unfortunately, they dropped one of the road decks during construction when the cables snapped, but no bother, they just brushed it off and fitted it into position anyway. I'm sure it's fine.
That's a nice bridge. Looks like the Golden Gate in California.
"20 or so miles later, and we arrive at the last destination of our tour, Wetwang. One of the first things you see as you drive into Wetwang is the Wetwang Communal Holy Pond. Today, just a pond, but back in the old days it served a very different purpose. The local tradition in the area was to arrive at the village and dip your gentleman's sausage in the pond, thus washing and cleansing you of any evil spirits that you might be bringing into the village. Of course, with
Dude said gentleman's sausage, in case you missed it.
no central heating, it took a while before you'd dry off, meaning you'd spend half a day walking around with a wet wang, and that's where the village gets its name.
No way.
On the north side of the village, we find the Wetwang Community Playground. Shocking. Well, thanks for coming along on this grand tour of stupid place names. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is, of course, a button specifically for that. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so.
I wish these videos were longer. There's a lot of driving. He does a very good job explaining things, but we only saw like 2 or 3 places, so that's unfortunate. But it's still cool. I still like the videos. I like the guy presenting, too. He's very informative. And he speaks fast enough where he gets the info up, but not too fast where you can understand him, as far as how I think anyway. But no, I like it. I like the videos. I just wish there was a little more in them. You know, it could have packed both these into one longer video, maybe with a little less driving. It's just me. It's me. It's not you. It's me. Anyways, those were some Bitchfield defensive. I love the Scunthorpe. That was great. So yeah, there's a couple of good ones in there. But that was it, man. That was the man. I don't know what to call it. Man, you're all one man. Hey, man, you, man. Don't mind me. The Grand Tour of Offensive Places in England Part 2. Hopefully Part 3 comes up soon. If not, I'm gonna have to reach out to my buddy Clacky and see if he can put together some offensive shit for me. I'm just kidding, Clacky. I'm not gonna make you do that or even ask you to do that. I was just joking. You guys be good, all right? Squirrel out. No idea what I'm doing.